Now let's move on to my segment called This Week in Comics, and this is where I talk about all the comics that I actually read this week. And I'm really excited about this segment because I just recently started reading comics. One of the main reasons that I started this YouTube channel is to talk about actual comics. So here's the comics that I'm going to talk about that I read in this past week. I'm going to be releasing this podcast usually on Tuesdays because Tuesdays or Wednesdays, because I want to comic books, the new issues of comic books come out on Wednesdays, and I want to have a week, because I'm going to be reading anywhere between 5 to 10 comics each week, and I want to have time to read those. So they come out on Wednesday, so I'll put them out I'll put this podcast out the following Tuesday or Wednesday, and then I'll pick up the next issues that Wednesday and then review them for the next podcast. So this week I'm going to talk about DC Rebirth, DC Universe Rebirth, Steve Rogers Captain America #1, Civil War 2, Batman Rebirth #1, Green Lanterns Rebirth #1, Green Arrow Rebirth #1, and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Pink #1. So let's go back to the top of the list. The first two comics I'm going to talk about came out a couple weeks ago. They didn't come out this week, but I wanted to shed some light on them really quickly. So here is my issue of the DC Rebirth that I didn't pick it up. My buddy Gio got it for me, but there's my issue. I think it's a different cover. I don't know if it's the regular cover or a variant cover because he had a different one, but this is the one I have. And you can kind of thank this comic right here for me buying, or I can thank, you don't have to thank it. I should thank it for making me really, really interested in reading comic books. I always wanted to, but you know, I just don't. A lot of us don't have time. But I'm a slave to these comic books now. I'm gonna be picking up a lot, and thanks to Rebirth, just Rebirth overall. There is an official spoilers talk review up. It was my first video I uploaded on Comic Hero Talk, so you can go check that out in the comic book reviews playlist. But just really quick, no spoilers. And by the way, yeah, that's something I need to mention. When I talk about comics on this Comic Hero podcast, I'm not going to mention any spoilers. Those will go in my official reviews of the individual comics. But for this podcast, there will be no spoilers. And just really quickly, I really enjoyed DC Rebirth. I love who's narrating it. And I love how it's a personal story, yet large in scope and covers most of the DC universe. And I feel like if you're a new reader, it's a good place to start. Although you probably will be confused at first. But pick and choose from this comic. You can pick and choose what characters you want to keep reading on, and then you'll find out more stuff going forward. And I think that's the best thing it does. It introduces a lot of new elements to new readers, and it lets you decide which characters you're interested in afterwards, and I really like it. And a lot of you know the big reveal at the end, which is really crazy. You can go to my official spoilers talk review of that to go hear mine and Gio Ramos' thoughts on that. Alright, moving on to the next one. This is another one that I had to pick up due to the big thing that has to do with it. I'm not going to say it because no spoilers, but something huge happened in Steve Rogers Captain America #1. You can see that right here. I had to pick it up. It was the talk of the comic book world a couple weeks ago, and I gotta say, I really enjoyed the issue. I didn't love it per se, but it was really cool to see. You get to see Steve Rogers as a child, which is something I've never seen before since I'm a new comic book reader. They never really touch on his childhood. And even in the movie, in the first Avenger, you meet him as like a young man. You never really see him as a child, and you get to meet his parents in this. And it's really cool. It's very informative if you don't know much about Captain America. And also, it focuses a lot on the love story with him and Sharon Carter. Though she's the character who's in the movies and is his current love interest right now. And you get to see, they're officially together in this comic book issue. So you get to see that. You get to see him work with some new sidekicks and stuff. But yeah, if you're interested, if you love Captain America, you love him in the movies, I would definitely pick it up. All right, now moving on to issues that actually came out earlier this past Wednesday. And this is the big one. This is probably my favorite issue of the whole entire week, is Civil War 2. Now, for those of you who don't know, Marvel has a Civil War 2 out, and it's pitting Captain Marvel and Iron Man against each other. And so exciting for me because I'm really getting into Captain Marvel, and I absolutely love this issue. There's a shot in the beginning of it, I think it's in the first couple pages, and it has like a lot of heroes in it. I mean, a lot. And for what's going on, it makes sense. It's not just shoved in there for no reason. The thing that I took away from this, you have to make a Civil War storyline in the Marvel Universe. The conflict has to be relevant, and it has to be intriguing, and it has to be believable in a way. The way they set up this conflict between Iron Man and Captain Marvel is fantastic. It's what drew me in. As soon as I figured out what the conflict was, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm totally in, and I had to keep reading it. And it's just really cool to see all these characters interact. It's really cool to see X-Men characters in there, because as movie fans, we don't get to see the X-Men interact with the other Marvel characters. So it's cool to see those characters in there. And it's just overall, man, it's so compelling, and it's very dark as well. So be prepared for some crazy stuff if you're going to pick that up. All right, moving on to some of the Rebirth issues that came out for DC. I didn't read all of them. Well, 4 came out this past week, and it was Batman Rebirth, Green Arrow, Green Lanterns, and Superman. The only one I haven't picked up yet is Superman Rebirth #1. I'm going to pick it up. I bought a lot lately, and I just didn't have time. So I read 3 though, so I'm gonna review those 3 really quickly. Batman Rebirth #1. You can see it right here. This is one that I really liked, but I didn't love. It's a good starting point. The villain is a little weird. I did not care for the villain or what his powers are, but just Batman and a new character that I don't know yet that they introduced to me, and that relationship, I'm really curious to see where that goes, so I'm definitely going to keep reading it. One that I just read last night is Green Arrow Rebirth #1. I really liked this. I really liked it. I didn't know anything about Green Arrow until I started watching the TV show. So, and that I'm a huge fan of Green Arrow now that I've watched the TV show for 4 seasons, and I've never read a comic of his until now. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. You get to see a lot of interactions with him and Black Canary, and it's an intriguing storyline. It's cool to see Oliver Queen in a different setting than we see him in the TV show. And if you're a fan of the Arrow TV show, I definitely recommend picking that issue up. It's really fun and really cool, different relationship between him and Dinah Laurel Lance, I should say. All right, well, moving on to another Green DC heroes, I should say, is Green Lanterns #1. So I didn't know much about this. It's actually not about Hal Jordan or any of the Green Lanterns that comic book readers have come to know. It's about 2 newer characters, Jessica Cruz and Simon Baz. And at first I was a little thrown off because I picked up this issue thinking that we would get more Hal Jordan or more John Stewart or more Guy Gardner, Kyle Rayner, those characters. But it's mainly about these 2 characters. And one thing that I'm really excited about this comic for is the fact that one of the main characters is a woman Green Lantern, which I think is so cool, and I think it's something that they can incorporate into the movies later on down the line. And also the fact that she's a Hispanic woman. Her name is Jessica Cruz. So you have, comic books in general and movies, TV shows, you want to keep the diversity going, and adding a woman Green Lantern who's also Hispanic is a great thing. That gets me really excited. And also, I think Simon Baz is African American. The coloring in the comic is kind of weird, but just it's really awesome to see diversity really moving forward in comics. So that's something that I'm really excited about. And also, these 2 characters are going to be heavy hitters. I don't think this is a spoiler because on the DC Rebirth cover, it shows them 2. So they're going to be, let's just say they're going to be incorporated in working with members of the Justice League somehow, some way. So that's something that I'm really excited about to see. All right, now moving on to the last comic I'm going to talk about today, which might throw some people off, but you heard me talk about Power Rangers earlier. The one movie I can remember furthest back to when I was a kid is going with my mom to watch the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers in theaters. And I grew up on the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers TV show. I had all the toys. I had the toys, all the weapons, the toy weapons that they had. I had everything. And I loved Power Rangers. And for someone like me, I stopped watching it after Mighty Morphin because the shows got too out of hand and too stupid. So I haven't been able to enjoy any any type of entity of Power Rangers lately at all. And I'm excited for the movie, but I'm itching to watch the movie. And I find out there's comic books, a current run of Power Ranger comics. And from what I heard, I talked to the guy at the comic book store, they're really taken seriously. It's not campy or stupid like the TV show was. And I haven't read the official Power Rangers run yet. I picked them up. It's only 3 issues so far. I'm going to read those and put those reviews up, but I wanted to review this one because it just released this week, and that is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Pink #1, and it's all about Kimberly. It's all about the Pink Ranger, and I got to show you guys this really cool variant cover that I got. The comic book store that I went to, Ken's Comics, shout out, he only had one of these, and he said you had to order a certain amount of the regular issues to get this, and I had to buy it. That's so awesome if you could see it. It has Kimberly with her bow, and I said Civil War 2 is my favorite comic this week. That's my second favorite because I think the mythology of the Power Rangers is so cool, and you could make it realistic within a sci-fi fantasy world and make it down more grounded and make it more serious, and that's exactly what this comic did. It puts Kimberly in a new situation by herself, and it makes sense why she's by herself. It's not forced, in my opinion, and it's really a cool read if you're a Power Rangers fan. If you're not a Power Rangers fan, I probably wouldn't recommend picking it up because you're not going to care. But if you are a Power Rangers fan, I definitely recommend picking up Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Pink #1. All right, well, that's going to do it for Comic Hero Talk official podcast #1. Thank you so much for those of you who watched. They're usually not going to be this long, but I had a longer intro than I'm ever going to have, and it makes sense for the first podcast. But I'm Jacob Bartley. Thank you all for listening. You can find me on Twitter at JacobBartley_, on Instagram at JacobRyanBartley. And you can find me on the YouTube channel Apocalypse Movies, where we talk about all movies, not just superheroes. We talk about everything, most major releases that come out. We do a movie news podcast, a Star Wars podcast called the Padawan Podcast. We do a Rumor Central podcast that's all about movie rumors. So yeah, go check Apocalypse Movies out. And if you enjoyed this video podcast, please subscribe to Comic Hero Talk, the YouTube channel. I would really appreciate it. I just started this YouTube channel. I'm trying to get it off the ground because I want to keep reviewing comic book movies, comic book TV shows, and actual comics. So if you got any enjoyment from this podcast, please subscribe and hit that like button. Please share and hit that comment section too. Let me know what you thought of any of the topics that I talk about. What do you think of Brie Larson playing Captain Marvel potentially? What do you think of Superman being in Supergirl? What do you think of all these topics? What do you think of the comics that I read? If you have any questions about the comics, shoot me down in the comment section. Let me know, and I'll get back to you for sure. Well, thank you all for listening. Until next time, you all take care.